Take three. Okay, guys. Take three. What do you think? Can we all send good Instagram juju this way? Hi, Kelly. Thanks for tuning back in, you guys. All right, we're gonna give this a third try and see if we can get this going again. You guys are hearing me okay? And is it that hey Sam, good to see you. Is it that Duane's audio is breaking up for you guys? Is that what you're hearing as well? Hopefully it works. Let's give it a try. Great. Perfect. Okay, stand by. Third time's the charm, guys. Yes, third time's the charm. I hear you.
Hey, I'm
Hey.
back. That seem
Okay.
better?
Yeah, you sound
Okay.
great. I don't think it's anything with your phone. I think it's an Instagram glitch, but hopefully we're good this time.
Okay. Hopefully they shook the gremlins out. Yeah.
Get those gremlins out. Um, so going back, we were just kind of talking about what type of child you were and how this kind of helped lead to your career working in animation.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to be an accountant, so I really took a left turn. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I was saying that I was a nerd. Big surprise, still am. Except when I was growing up, I'm probably a little bit older than most of you watching. But when I was growing up, being into comic books and monster movies and cartoons was sort of a unique thing. And then, maybe it was just bravado on the schoolyard where, everybody else was doing the same thing and didn't want to admit it. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but, so I had to hold my own with my interests, but I did. I kind of kept to myself. I read a lot and again, loved comics, the early Marvel, DC stuff, monster comics, science fiction, pretty much all of it. I was in a swirl of it, and I loved music too. Whatever my parents were listening to, Beatles, Elvis, etc. So, all those influences, I think, helped to form me.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of pop culture. And you were growing up right in the heart of Hollywood. Did that movies, film, TV, was that of interest as well?
You know, not so much. Although, my dad would, point out an actor if we saw somebody on the street or, at the bowling alley or, whatever the case may be. So I certainly have those kind of memories, right? But yeah, I think my interests just sort of preceded us moving out here. So I don't know if I was breaking up, but I was pointing out that I was born and raised very early in Niagara Falls, New York.
Hmm. Yep.
And then we moved out west. I had my fifth birthday on Zuma Beach. So,
Ah,
I think my interest in movies and spaghetti westerns and spy movies, all that stuff was already ingrained in me before, it wasn't like, hey, I'm in Hollywood, so it wasn't like that. I'm a very Hollywood dude.
did you start writing at a young age?
Oh yeah, I used to come up with my own stories, feature length, and then after
Wow.
dinner would pull my grandfather onto the porch and say, "Okay, it's story time," and he would smoke his White Owl cigars. I don't even think that they look like brown paper bags. I don't think they were even real cigars. By the way, kids, don't smoke. I am not, yeah, not glorifying smoking here. But my grandfather, yeah, once in a while, and very Harry Potter, and he would sit there and patiently listen to me as I spun my tale, and they were, usually westerns, sometimes monster movies, and there was just a lot of action and violence. And then when I went grade school, I would write these stories, and everybody else would write, for English class or whatever, and everybody else would, write their 1 or 2 page stories, and I would turn on like these 20-page, like, I really got into it. And I remember one of the two comments on the back on the grade. He gave me an A and applauded my imagination. And he was like, but you know, you consider less blood next time and try to focus more on character. So, and I was like, what, 7. So, yeah.
Did you listen?
So that's it. Well, Carmen Sandiego, come on. And I am proud that she rarely uses her fists first. She's an amazing heroine who thinks her way out of situations. And it's, definitely a smart girl wins show. And character. Yes, I evolved from my humble, action-crazed beginnings. So, but it sort of started and evolved. And yes, the stories got longer and longer and longer. I still have some of them. I should come up one of these days and give them a read.
That would be
I can post them on Instagram
amazing.
when I become
Yeah, an Instagram live reading
social
of your
media
stories from the 7th grade.
Ooh, possibilities. Yeah. Okay. I like
That would be so funny. So speaking of Carmen, can you tell us a little bit about how the reboot came to fruition? Did Netflix come to you? Did you go to them? How did that come about?
Houghton Mifflin Court actually were the ones who came to me. They had acquired the rights to Carmen and apparently had been sitting on the rights for a while. Nothing had been done with Carmen for I think a couple of decades, and they were ready to reboot. So they were looking for a take, and I think they had pretty much a commitment from Netflix. We're very interested in Carmen. It's obviously a big, potentially big franchise and a terrific brand, and the nostalgia, was right. And also they were talking a lot about their interactive, and I think they saw this as a natural for the interactive. So what became the interactive special was something that was bandied about from the very beginning as a possibility. But primarily when Houghton Mifflin asked me about it, they were the ones who said, we are interested in telling Carmen's story. Her story has never really been told. And I think I've said this before, but when they reached out to us, oh, it's one of these. I don't know why they're reaching out to me. It seemed like a girl-centric show, which is not really what I do. I'm like more of a boys action, smart boys action, but boys action. And there was the educational component, and I was like, I don't know if I'm right for. They kept on insisting, narrative driven. What's her story? And as I started to think about what her story might be, I got so excited. And very short, the excitement clearly showed through. And when I pitched in my take, that it was pretty darn good. I didn't know if it's what they would want, but I figured I'd give my try. This is the show I would like to do, and it's history. They
So it was a good pitch.
It was a good pitch. It was very, very organic. The show that you see is the show that I pitched, and it just felt so right, in so many ways, and as reflected in the fan response, thankfully, because what, it doesn't matter. I mean, as much as I would like to say, look, I'm just writing for me. Look, if nobody's watching, if nobody else is enjoying it, then you've missed your mark. So, clearly, we've touched a lot of people with our series.
And the show is so different from the 80s show, and the educational component and everything. Did you find there were a lot of challenges in writing for such an iconic character?
Yes and no. I mean, on one thing, which is that one thing that gave me freedom, at least in conceiving it, is that iteration of Carmen until then, the video game, the live action game show, the original animated series, which leaned more into education, and actually was a virtual member that was all taking place inside of a computer they would zoom through. Each iteration was so different from the one before. It sort of, I felt, gave the freedom to really make this different. But, there's this weird, different but the same, not Carmen. So yes, we made the choice for her to be an anti-hero rather than well, let's face it, she's a hero. But yeah, and then look, I think that was the single biggest trepidation, was I knew there was going to be blowback. I knew there were going to be the haters out there. And they came out in droves, but they fell away so quickly. How could you change it? And, and I think, hopefully they stuck around to see more. But I think, for me, what am I trying to say? I lost my train of thought. Well, she's Latina. She's a female. I would like to make a Latina female villain in today's world. We wanted to make her relevant. I think if it were truly a adult, more mature leaning show, then you could do all kinds of crazy adult things, like explain how she became a villain. But for me, the important thing was she still steals. She may be a good guy now, but the key thing is she's still the world's greatest thief, and the show is still educating way. But again, with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's permission, we're like, it's okay to flip the script, focus on narrative, and we talked a lot about how to bake in the education. It was still educational, but and then the other thing is, I wanted a movie-length pilot that would really invest you in her character, so that when you got to the turn where she decided to rebel against Vile and be a Rob-like anti-hero, that it made sense. Hopefully we earned that, and it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does
How's
the
our
writer's
reception?
room work on Carmen? There's a bit of a delay, but I can still see you and hear you perfectly. So I think we should just go with it. Yeah.
The writer's room, fun. You know what? It's a lot like this. You just sit there and watch me talk all day. No. We had a great group, very small, very, very lean. Yeah, I know. It's probably, mostly true, but no, I had a group, very small group of writers. We expanded it for our second order, season 4. But, writing is interesting. It's magic when it's happening. It's misery when it's not. I'd say there's a lot of quiet stretches where, some days you just feel like we're never going to crack this, and miserable feeling. And then suddenly it all comes together, and, somebody says one thing, says another, and all the dots are connecting. But I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the writing is the best of times and worst of group. And we had the directors come down for a couple of the writing rooms, come down from Vancouver. And so we expanded the group. We had everybody on board, and our directors were amazing and contributed a lot to the storytelling and a lot to fine-tuning things. The story sense was really good. Joss Humphrey, Mike West, great guys, and Brian Hume, our amazing line producer, came down and contributed as well. So,
Wow. Yeah. And so did you know from the start kind of how the overall arc of the story was going to go for multiple seasons, or did that just come organically throughout the process?
I had some idea of how the arc would go, but then, so you have a target, and then just as you start to talk and churn and throw ideas more, some things fall, some things stick. Some of that, like, I remember, I have to revisit the Bible. I know I did a very detailed Bible with a sort of overview of what season 2 and season 3 might look like, and some of that definitely changed. I think at one point, there were 2 babies, and Carmen was going to learn that she had a brother, and the chief was male at one point, and yeah, so things definitely got worked out in the writing room, but definitely for the better. We always came to a better place, and I guess that's why you do writers' room. It's exciting, yeah.
It is exciting. The writing on the show is so great. So then how, to get Gina
Oh,
Rodriguez
thank
as the lead, that's, she's such a fantastic actress and involved in so many A-list projects. How did that come about? Was she interested from the start or attached at the beginning?
We came up with our wish list of Carmen's, and she was pretty much at the top of it. And we sent her
Yes.
the pilot. We waited, and we waited, and then and she said yeah, and we got word that she was really excited about it, and the Carmen stands for so much. They're really assessing on the brother comment. I
I know.
never should have said that. Yeah, trust me, it was nearly as good. It was very, telenovela, right? Which was great for Jane the Virgin, but not so much for Carmen. See how I brought that back around? Yeah, I think Gina was really excited about the inclusivity of the character and the female empowerment, and it was just everything that she stands for. And having a aspirational Latina hero, young. Anyway, I think my great moment of pride was the first time I met Gina. So there we were in the recording studio waiting for her to arrive, and she came in, was introduced to whoever was in the room, and then our voice director Jamie Simone, who I cannot shout out to for just doing such an amazing job helping us find the cast and being in there with the booth in his great ear and directing these characters. And then they oh, and this is Duane. And before they even finished saying my name, she came in, she tore right across the room, body slammed me. I think I knocked her some furniture. I don't know. It was one of those. She was excited and gave me the biggest body slam hug. I was like, she told me how much she loved the script, and I was like, you know what? This is going to go well. And I think my biggest fear was, can she? Because there are voice actors, right, who do a lot of cartoon voices and things, who are amazing, and we have some of those in our cast. And then there were others in our cast who we cast because of just who they are, seem to match the character. And I was like, we're asking Gina to pull off being, quite a few years back sheep, and can she do it? And it was amazing. She did it without forcing it, just sort of putting her voice in sort of a different placement, and again, and making it believable. She sounded young. A lot of it was in her attitude, not necessarily the voice quality, if that makes sense. So I was like, she's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, she's so fantastic. I mean, she just brings so much to the character and to the role, and is such an inspiration for women across the world. She had that amazing quote in Entertainment Tonight that said, basically, as a Latina, seeing that brown skin on animation is revolutionary. When I saw the trailer, I started crying. That's not common. It should be. We give ourselves allowance when we see that. And for women, we've had an incredible year of so many strong, fantastic, brilliant women standing up and saying hey guys, not cool anymore. So it's wonderful to have a character like Carmen, because repetition is needed. We don't need to see one. We need to see 1,000, 1,000,000, because it's necessary to show time and time again the normalization. So I just was really inspired reading that, and what everybody has put into the show is amazing as well.
She is. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. We have a little delay, so.
Yeah. I just wanted to really and how inspirational she is, and I also wanted to give a special shout out to Finn, who we watched grow 4 years or so that we were recording, and Finn was amazing. I think just brings such a natural feel to player. He just sort of inhabits space. He sounds like a real kid. And you had mentioned the educational before, and it's funny. Somebody on one of the channels or said recently, like, oh, they're briefing each other on information they already know. And I wanted to point out, and I don't know if it's something that really leaps off the screen, but our intention always with player was, he's not a brainiac. He's not a geography buff. He's extraordinaire. But what we were trying to impart with him is, in our sneaky little way, we were trying to show a kid simply Googling information, getting it on the fly, and getting excited about what he's learning. And that was sort of our, how we were trying to handle those scenes. We call them action maps internally. That term never made it into the series, but that was our word for those little vignette sequences. And I thought it was worth noting, like how we were trying to approach our player. And I don't know if it really comes on in mind if you look at it that way. That's what you'll see.
That's great. Yeah, because the educational component. What was that?
Oh, sorry. I one of the things, and somebody noted player and Julia besties, and that's another thing that has talked about, and I love that moment where Julia and player first meet in the series. It's so sweet, and that's sort of like the upside and downside of binging is that, like, everybody binged it within a day or two. Everybody was talking about the big season defining moments, and all the little moments sort of get lost. This water cooler at work, when the next day you an episode and you're like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next week, and some of that gets lost. So thank you for Julia and player.
Yeah, she says, I feel so validated. That's great. Absolutely. So on the topic of character design and the artwork, the artwork on the show is so beautiful. How did you guys go about developing the overall look and feel of the show?
Well, very simply, it's Kevin Dart. He is amazing. It's his design style. It's a version of his design style. He is somebody, I've seen some of his work in a coffee table book at one point and online, and it blew me away. And I always want to work with him, and was just hoping to find the right project someday. And I think the of retro and thing, in my mind was perfect. And he had a character online, one of his things, sort of that it was a little groovier, a little even, and he had, to my knowledge, he had never done sort of action show like this, and I was wondering if it would work. Anyway, long story short, we reached out. Same thing. We waited, and actually with him, we waited. He lost his phone or something. Anyway, he finally reached out to us, and he was so excited. And in the meantime, we had been getting pitches from other artists, all amazing, but like all different shows, and not really the show we were looking for. And I was like, please be it, please be it. And when Caroline and CJ and I saw Kevin Dart's art pitch, and Kevin Dart and his team at Chromosphere, his design, we were so relieved. He nailed it. It was everything we were looking for. The sophistication, the row without being too geeky, it had all the sophistication of Carmen. Kevin Dart and Chromosphere, I cannot say enough about them. It's really perfect.
And did you guys work remotely?
We're in LA, and our production studio, animation studio, is in Vancouver. So it's a very small design studio, and although he works. Kevin works remotely with artists around the world. They're very much a global, have global reach as well in the pandemic. That was just part of his vision of his studio. So no, so he is here in town, but I drove maybe 3 times over the course of. So yeah, it was pretty much all done remotely, whether you're in town or out of town.
Interesting. Yeah. And also the music, it has such a key element in creating suspense for the show. I'm wondering if you can talk about the process of working with your composers.
Oh man, I would love to. Again, I feel like everybody on the show is an unsung hero. So suspense. Like for me, it's certainly suspense, and but it's also what I call swagger with Carmen. Not a word. I just when I do a new project, I'm like, okay, you know what words sort of strike the vibe of what we're trying to do. And I think with Carmen it was swagger. Same thing with the art style. I wanted a foot in 60s pop eye thrillers, like with the music as well as the visuals, but I didn't want it to sound like we were spoofing it or being a homage to it. I wanted it to be its own thing. And so Eggplant is our composers. It's Steve D'Angelo, Lorenzo Fratelli. I always forget his last name because I know another Lorenzo. I'm going to mix him up with it. But Steve, Lorenzo, and Joe, our editor, are the series composers.
Yep.
And then Jared Lee Goslin is our main title composer. And we just just trying to find the best fit for what we were doing. So so we did cast the net a little wider, and it was just one of those things where, Eggplant won the score, and Jared nailed the pitch on the main title, which I love, visuals and the music. So did I answer your question? We had I had very sort of specific, as with everything, I try to go, whether it's writer's room or a music meeting or I go in with the idea of what I want, and completely willing to take a left turn and be surprised. And in the case of the score, which was your original question, those guys always blew me away. They would take it one further. They weren't afraid to take a left turn, even if it wasn't sort of what I suggested. And it was just again a great marriage of finding a place where everything was clicking. I love the soundtrack so much. And first, I should say all the soundtracks for my series I really love, but this is the one that I'd like to in the background as makes sense rather than just a picture.
Yeah.
And yes, I do have a soundtrack. It's really smart. Somebody's going to ask. So some
I
things
think
are,
like 6 people
bigger
asked.
than me. Oh, okay. I just yes. I've seen those, and I agree. I would love it to be. Yeah. So some decisions are bigger than me. I've been a squeaky wheel about it. We shall see. Yeah. I don't have control over something.
You guys know what to do.
Yeah.
And then so.
And by the way, I don't have a hard out, so if you can go a little later, we can
Oh,
make up
sure.
for the technical glitches that we
Make up for that.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
cool.
worries.
Cool. So we touched on this a little bit, but Carmen Sandiego is part of the Netflix Representation Matters collection, and I was curious about what ways the producers have incorporated diversity into the series in casting and beyond.
Well, and remember the whole movement of being inclusive and casting appropriate has taken a lot of momentum, especially recently, and more as it should be. I think we cast the show 5 years ago, so we were ahead of the curve on that. But for us, it wasn't too difficult. It was because the show sort of, you know, tells you how to cast it, and we wanted to be cast appropriate because it's not a, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but because it's not a cartoony show,
Mhm.
you're not doing that kind of voice talent. So basically, yes, we cast color appropriate pretty much across the board, heroes, villains. We also cast, where we weren't, okay, Raphael Bertardi, who plays Chase, is not French, but he's French Canadian, and that was close enough for me because his initial audition made me laugh, and not only did it make me laugh, but he was perfect for the character. I think everyone else did Inspector So, and I was like, the guy has his perception issues, but I wanted him to be masculine and heroic and a good cop, and Raph captured that. But the thing that you may not know is, and I'm not kidding, the guy literally speaks like 10 languages. He speaks Mandarin, and I know it's unbelievable. There's a little bit at the end of our Beijing episode, 401, the Chinese fisherman, where Neil the Eel is making his escape on the boat at sea, the fishing trawler, and there's some Mandarin spoken. That's Raph. Sid, in some cases, whoever we cast was right for the character, but it was an added bonus. Like Raphael, Andrew Pivko, who plays El Topo, Bernardo de Paula, lived in Brazil for a while. Sharon Muthu, I forget if she speaks another language, but she sings opera. Like, everybody in our cast was so talented, but not in the typical, like, I could do different voices thing, but just like they were able pretty accurate accents when we characters, not for leads, but when we had to fill out our world during Carmen's travels.
Yeah, and what about in the writers' room and behind the scenes in terms of diversity?
Well, Wild Brain is a very diverse crew, and I've gone up there. Our how to put this, very progressive minded, where we couldn't cast as diversely as we would have liked. You would not meet a more culturally sensitive group of people. We had fact checkers on the show, but everybody sort of shared the burden of being a fact checker and making sure that we were getting representing cultures right, and in so much as we could. And for the writers' room, that's an easy answer. 2 words: poor Greg. I just made sure that our male writer was outflanked by female writers. So there.
That's awesome.
For a show that celebrates girl power, of course. That was only right. So poor Greg.
Sorry, Greg. Greg loved it. What are we saying? What are we talking about? Greg loved it. No, so the Carmen Sandiego has a whole line of educational books. How do the books support the series, and how does the series support the books?
The books that in the Carmen Sandiego line aren't just educational. There are actually some graphic novel adaptations of some of our episodes. I think they've done the Sticky Rice Caper and the Fishy Doubloon Caper. There might be another one out there. So there's the graphic novel. And then there are choose your own adventure books, actually, which shout out to our secret weapon on our interactive special, Sam Nissan. He's the guy who really helped us crack the thinking of how to structure an interactive special, because he's a game guy. And it's funny, when you think game guy, like, it just you get a picture of like the hacker slacker dude. That's not Sam. He's completely different. He looks like a fact checker, talks like a hacker, but he's a game guy at heart. And he was the one who mapped out all the branches and played to. I think we'd still be lost in the woods. We're not anyway. But he has written one or two of the Choose Your Own Adventure Carmen books so far. So I think there's that. So the book series, and then lastly, there's a adaptation of the pilot, and I think the book is actually, it's not called Becoming Carmen Sandiego. It's called Who in the Carmen Sandiego, which was our little trivia original title for the series, for the pilot. Sorry, and then we changed it at some point for some reason or another. But the book is still called that. And the book is an adaptation of the pilot that I wrote. I didn't write the adaptation, but I was involved. I gave notes and consulted, and we and it is there are expanded sections. So if you love the pilot, you might want to check that out because it's sort of like a not really a director's cut, but it is an expansion. There's some other scenes. I know there's some new scenes with the Chef El Topo, who we didn't have a lot of room to embellish in the on screen in the pilot. And then lastly, God, this sounds like such a plug, but there is some of the books are just original Carmen adventures, like other adventures in the Carmen world. So if until such a day comes where we can do more of these, there are books out there. So yeah.
That's amazing. How exciting. I would love also the Choose Your Own Adventure books. I'm sure my son would love those. So thank you for sharing that with us. Um, before we get into some audience questions, I just was wondering if we could go back a little bit in time for you to talk about what it was like working on some other classic properties like Scooby-Doo, Transformers, DC Superhero Friends. You kind of definitely have been reimagining some really classic stuff. So what was that like?
I approach every sort of project a little bit differently. I mean, there are sometimes there's more guardrails than others. Sometimes I come into a project at the beginning. Sometimes it's a little later, so it depends on the project. But not everything's a reimagination. Certainly, again with Carmen, I'll give you an example. With Carmen, it was it spoke to me. It asked to be what it was. It was just that organic and Kismet, just amazing. I wish they could all be that easy. I did a Batman show where I went into
The Batman, sorry.
and it was, and yes, I know, the Batman. And that one was a little more trepidatious for me because Batman is such a classic and so near and dear to my heart. Mm-hmm. And there had already been a classic series, Batman, the animated series, that I did not work on, but a lot of my friends did. And and it's such a monolithic icon in TV animation. It sort of rewrote the book, the possibilities on what you could do in boys action on Saturday morning cartoons at the time. And that was a little more trepidatious because I'm like, I'm never going to go. They're going to crucify me, And I'm proud of the Batman, but it was a different thing. You couldn't do the original Batman, the animated series, with that level of darkness and sort of almost live action storytelling. There was not as much action in those. There was a lot of talk and a lot of adult characters. I think the Batman was meant to be more of an action show and a little bit lighter, brighter. The other tricky thing about that one was we had Christopher Nolan's Batman movie was in production at the time, and it was top secret. We weren't privy, so it was we couldn't be privy to any of that. And we had a liaison who would answer our questions in very cryptic ways, but it was like working on a path and we were not allowed to do certain things, go down certain roads because the movie was, yet they couldn't spell anything out. So it was almost like, you can't see over the fence. It's all this cryptic note passing. So that was a very tricky one, for instance. The Scooby-Doos were fun, but I didn't show run them. They weren't I wrote those as freelance, and actually, you know what? I did two different ones. One was a little intimidating because I had never written for Scooby before, and to me, that's always a little like you got to do your home. It's one thing to be a fan and to have watched it growing up
Yeah.
and love it, but it's another to get an assignment out of nowhere and be like, okay, this is due in way less time than should be allowed, and I have to learn how to construct one of these. Enjoying it and knowing how to do are two different things. But then I worked on Be Cool Scooby-Doo, where they were all about breaking the rules in a way. I mean, yes and no. It's like you approach these things and look, it depends on how many of this thing has existed, right? I mean, there seems to be a Batman of some way, some shape or form every couple of years, and what's the fresh take on it? Shout out to my buddy and Michael Jelinek, who is co-showrunner of Teen Titans Go. You look at that, it's amazing. It's Teen Titans. Whoever would have imagined that Teen Titans, could work that way? And yet it works, but you can't do that to everything. And by the way, there are people who love Teen Titans who hate that show, so you can't please everybody all the time. I don't know if I answered your
Both of
question,
them.
but I'm riffing, man.
That's what we're here
so
for.
I've been around. I've worked on a lot of different things, and every project is different, and I think every individual project sort of asks you how to handle it, I guess.
Yeah.
Respect the project. That sounds very zen. Okay.
What about Transformers Prime? Did that have?
Did you finish your question? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Just were there challenges working on that property?
There are always challenges. Any
What
show
goes up?
has its challenges. Any show, throws curveballs at you. It's just part of it, and it's how you how you deal with those challenges. And so yes, it did. But for me, that is one of my favorites, and I think that in some ways, everything I learned about pushing the envelope on the dramatic storytelling and messing with structure and sort of doing like borrowing techniques from real TV shows and putting it into animation and just swinging for the fences and taking storytelling risks. Everything that you see in Carmen, really, I think in some ways started with Transformers, and part of what it shared is that it's serialized storytelling, Transformers especially. But kids, if you liked Carmen, try Transformers Prime. It's really gripping, really intense character storytelling. And by the way, sort of like Carmen, I wasn't a Transformers fan when I was asked to Transformers is not part of my nostalgia. I love the effects in the movies, but I didn't love the movies, and I was kind of like, and then you find a heartbeat, and part of it for me was the original Transformers, nostalgic for many, but try to watch it now. It's kind of dated. The mythology's a little crazy, and so I saw it as an opportunity to really humanize the characters, and by the characters I mean the non-human characters. Like my goal was to go in and make you love and root for these alien robots, alien Autobots and Decepticons from another planet, and I think it succeeded. It's a really great storytelling. I'm very proud of that show.
Yeah. Emmy Award-winning show. Great show.
Yeah, that's right. We did win an Emmy. Yep.
Yeah.
I'd have them right here to show off, but there isn't enough room in the frame. So, yeah.
It would just take up your
Oh,
whole,
wait,
I
hold
know
on,
there,
hold on.
it's so tight. It's like, hi guys.
Here's my Emmy. No, it's
Oh,
actually
there's
just
yeah.
my swell water
Here's
bottle, but
mine.
sort of looks like one. Yeah.
So
Okay.
Transformers,
It's still even.
yeah. So Transformers obviously was an 80s cartoon, not Transformers Prime was the reboot, but you did also work on some beloved 80s cartoons like Alvin and the Chipmunks, Alf, which I loved, and Gummy Bears. We had Katie Lee on a couple weeks ago. Jason
Oh,
Marsden was on a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I just was wondering what that was like. I mean, getting started in writing for animation in the early days.
well, I worked on Steamboat Willie as well. No,
No.
you said early days. I'm like, gee, how old are you? Yeah, to me, the early days is like, back cartoons didn't have
No.
sound.
I mean your early
No,
days. I mean
I
your
know
early
you're
days.
dating me. You're dating me. Yes, but no. It's a valid question. What was it? It was fun. Sort of other badge of honor that I have is well, first off, yeah, I was like a kid, and I sort of fell into it. I was actually gonna go and get my graduate degree and teach, but I was always interested in film. There was a point where I was going to go to film school. I didn't. That's a whole other story. Anyway, so but I fell in love with what I was majoring in, was English lit, and I was gonna go to grad school, and but I took a semester off. Life happened, a couple of left turns. I just sort of wound up accidentally, not accidentally in it, but yeah, it's too long a story, and we're running out of time. So I want to get to the fan questions, but we were kids, and there was an article by Robert Lloyd who wrote for the LA Times, and I believe he may write for the LA Weekly now, or I know he's still writing about TV, and he's a really intelligent writer, and I loved reading his stuff at the time. And one day he wrote an article about Saturday morning television, and he name checked 3 shows. My memory for stupid stuff is incredible, but he name checked the Adventures of Mighty Mouse, Hello Kitty, and Alf as sort of a new wave of Saturday morning animation that was sort of like cooler, hipper, kind of culty, and the animated series was very culty, for reasons that we don't have enough time to go into.
Yeah.
But it was like sort of the strange an analogy, sort of like the strange stepchild sitcom. The sitcom was almost more for kids than the animated series was. Anyway, so a lot of it was me being me, and with like-minded individuals, many of which who went on to work on all kinds of other great shows. But like it was sort of like in a way this early, punk think tank of guys who just were given the keys to the toy store and wanted to do something cool. So yeah. So,
Yeah.
so it was a neat time to be doing stuff and getting away with stuff that you couldn't imagine getting away with, 10 years later, um, uh, franchises became more corporate and more important because they're all linked to movies and stuff, but
Mm.
yeah, it was funny. It was like nobody was minding the candy store.
The Wild
So
West in a way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have one more question, then we'll go to our fans' questions. But I just was wondering, what are you hoping that the fans take away from Carmen Sandiego?
I'm going to quote my good friend Shadow-san. Anyone can be Carmen Sandiego.
So
Come
good.
on, short and sweet, right?
So
For once,
perfect.
you're like,
Yes.
thank God, when's he going to shut up?
No, I think that's great. Anybody can be Carmen Sandiego. Well, I know you guys have started to put your questions in the question mark box at the bottom. So I'm going to go and we'll pick a couple. We just have a few more minutes left. So if I don't get to your question, I apologize, but know in advance that we do appreciate it. And I got to go. I love Carmen Sandiego. A lot of, let's see. So yes, we have so many great questions, guys. I will take this question from Starhy because Sharon's a good friend of mine, and we'll start there. How did Dr. Bellum's final design come together? Starhy says, I love the character so much.
Dr. Bellum was one of the characters. Well, we pulled from all the Carmen lore iterations, and we remixed the heck out of most of it. But Dr. Bellum is actually one conception of the character, the mad scientist. Named was directly from the '90s cartoon, and she even had goggles, and so in some ways hers was closer to the original than say Gunnar. That name, that was another character from the '90s iteration, but our Maelstrom, just by example, looks sounds nothing like them. But really, Kevin and Chromosphere and Keiko, who designed her, would probably be a better person to answer that question. But
maybe we can get them on the show.
I think it was just process. They did a pitch. If I recall, it'd be great to do like a group one of these. Yeah, we'd can we do it on an iPad so the screen's bigger to fit everybody in? But anyway, I don't have a super brilliant question. It was just they pitched something. As I recall, what they originally pitched was very close to the end result, and it was just sort of fine tuning. What if she had a little shock of white in her hair? That kind of thing. Oh, what about the pen clip? That kind of brainstorming. But yeah, they're again Chromosphere, amazing. Full credit. And then Sharon, of course, your pal and mine, bringing Dr. Bell to life, again, taking it to a whole other level.
Absolutely. Okay, this is a great question. What was your favorite episode to write?
Oh.
So, like asking you to pick a child. Which child is your favorite? Which cat do you like the best?
That's what I'm going to say. They're all my babies. Boy, yeah. I would talk for like 20 minutes. I mean, the pilot was really emotional for me. Call CJ and Caroline in tears, going, "I just came up with the scene." Like it was just so moving to me, and figuring out her story and coming up with those scenes and planting those seeds, having a sense of where it was going to go after that very intense emotional time for me, in the best of all possible ways. But gosh, I mean all the season finales. The final two-parter in season 4. I cannot watch that without like bawling, but I also bawl. This is true. I also bawl when we show Marler. I don't know why. I just find that moment so brilliant. So yeah, I'm weird, So no, they're all my babies. That's not a fair question. Never ask me that again.
Kicking it off the list. Let's see.
Not you, that guy, or whoever that was.
That guy. No,
look, if we had another half hour, I would step through all the episodes and do like that kind of, maybe that's for
a breakdown, an episode breakdown.
Oh, Julia. Are we doing the Julia character?
Yeah. Can you share some fun facts about Julia? She's an amazing character.
And she means so much to me. Did you? Thank you for mentioning Julia. She is one of my favorite characters. Again, they're all my babies. I have no favorites in that regard. But what I love about Julia, and I was like really adamant about this, like she has a quiet dignity, and she has such power. because she speaks the truth. And I think it's especially relevant today as we swirl in this nightmare of misinformation.
Uh-oh. You froze for a second, but I think you're coming back. I don't hear you. Shoot. I'm not hearing you right now. Do you guys hear Duane right now, or is it just me? I'm not hearing you. It's happened again. Want to try it one more time? I know, because I really want to make sure that I got this episode. Okay. No. I think it's loading, but I do want to be able to upload this replay. So I think what we're going to do, can you hear me, Duane? You can hear me or no? So what I want to do is I just want to make sure that I get this one uploaded, and that it's saved, because we'll try and come back on, but I want to make sure that I upload this before, so that people can access the live stream. So give us 2 minutes, and we'll try and come back just to say goodbye. Okay, you guys? Okay, stand by. See you in a minute.